The Mario series isn't known for its complex storytelling. Most games in the series boil down to little more than stopping Bowser and saving Peach. The Paper Mario series is a welcome departure from this. The first 3 games have very detailed stories with tons of characters, and even the more recent ones have some memorable faces. Of course, with so many characters, there are plenty of villains thrown in the mix. So, which of these villains are the worst of the worst? Well, that's what we're gonna figure out today. Hey guys, I'm Brad with One Up Binge, and this is Paper Mario Villains, Evil to Most Evil. In order to make this list easier to follow, we've split the villains up into several categories, starting with the barely evil. These are the bad guys who've done some villainous things, but either their good actions outweigh their bad, or their evil actions are mostly negligible. It might be a stretch to even consider some of these people villains, but we figured it would be best to have our bases covered. Starting with the least evil, we have Tech. Tech was designed by the X-Nauts to be the best computer in history, and one of his main responsibilities is monitoring Princess Peach. He quickly falls in love with her, helps her find data on the X-Nauts' plan, and even lets her contact Mario to help him find the crystal stars. The only reason Tech can be considered a villain is because he was built by the X-Nauts and was likely used to aid their evil plans, but his sacrifice to stop them makes up for it. Even if he survived, the danger was real, and he was more than ready to face it. Right below Tech, we have Vivian. Her tenure as a villain didn't last long. She worked alongside her sisters, the Shadow Sirens, to help the X-Nauts resurrect the Shadow Queen. But after being relentlessly bullied by them, she ran off to help a shadowy figure who turned out to be Mario. She left Mario when she figured out who he was, as he was initially her enemy, but she quickly comes back to fight alongside him. Much like Tech, she was with the wrong crowd, and her worst actions were only implied. She's higher than Tech because Tech had more to lose by betraying his masters. Vivian could run off with Mario and abandon her sisters, while Tech didn't have that option and was doomed the moment Grottis figured out what he was up to. Next is a series staple, Bowser Jr. Just a quick note, for series mainstays like him, we're only counting his actions within the Paper Mario games. Paper Jam doesn't count, as that's more of a Mario and Luigi game. Bowser Jr. serves as a recurring boss in Paper Mario Sticker Star and an ally to Mario in Paper Mario, the Origami King. All he wants is to save his father from King Ali, and after Mario and company help him out, he leads the charge in doing just that. He puts himself in danger so Mario can advance, which is heroic. And while he was a villain in Sticker Star, the stakes in that game were vague, and he was doing it to help his dad, so we can give him more of a pass than usual. Next up is the Mafia Kingpin of West Rogueport, Don Pianta. Given his rivalry with Ishnail, the seedy nature of Rogueport, and everything about him screaming Mafia, it's safe to say that Don has a few crimes under his belt. We never see any of these crimes though. In fact, he spends the entire game being helpful. He gets the gang tickets to Glitzville and Poshley Heights, both of which are necessary to collect the crystal stars. All he asks for in return is help in finding his daughter and lieutenant, both he cares a lot about. Plus, West Rogueport is in good condition compared to the rest of the town, so at least he's good at his job. Still, he's up to a lot of shady business, and likely would have been higher on this list if we'd seen some of his crimes. Next up is Rockhawk. This guy serves as a red herring. It's constantly hinted that something shady's going on at the Glitz Pit, and considering Rockhawk's belt has a crystal star on it, he seems like the culprit. He isn't though. He's just an arrogant fighting champion. The only reason he's on here at all is because he locks Mario in a locker room to force him into forfeiting the championship match. It's a short-sighted plan, as he would have to keep doing that every time Mario challenged him. But it is underhanded, worse than anything we see Don Pianta do, which is why he's at this spot. Once you get past Francis's creepiness, you realize he's harmless. He kidnaps Tippy at the beginning of the Bitlands, thinking she's just a butterfly, and wanting to take pictures. This is a massive thorn in the gang's side, but from his perspective, he was just catching a butterfly. Even when he fought Mario and the others, it was immediately after Peach blew up his computer, so you can understand why he'd be mad. Besides, he will sell you a replacement for Tippy after the final chapter, so that's helpful at least. Kamik is where he is for largely the same reasons as Bowser Jr. He's higher than Jr. because he does more to stop Mario in previous games. He is annoying in Sticker Star, doing things like separating all of Wiggler's body segments and turning all of Mario's stickers into flip-flops. Plus, unlike Bowser Jr., Kamik makes an appearance in Color Splash. He helps the good guys in Origami King, but his crimes in past games push him further down the list. Cortez is the ghost of a once famous pirate captain who now resides in Key Hall Key. When Mario and the gang set sail for the island, Cortez has his ghost army cause a shipwreck and tries to stop them from getting to his treasure room. Thankfully, Cortez is reasonable. When he finds out Mario's only interested in the Crystal Star, he gives it to him. And while stranding the crew on Key Hall Key was uncalled for, Flavio had a gem that was stolen from Cortez centuries ago. So there's a reason for a grudge. Plus, once he gets it back, he buries the hatchet, helps Mario and co. take down Lord Crump, and sails the crew back to Rogueport safe and sound. Bowser is difficult to rank because his role drastically changes from game to game. His worst crimes were in the original Paper Mario, where he not only kidnapped Peach, but also imprisoned the Star Spirits and stole the Star Rod, ensuring only his wishes would come true. In Thousand Year Door, he's an afterthought, searching for the Crystal Stars, which there is nothing wrong with. In Super Paper Mario, he was at his best, teaming up with Mario to stop Count Bleck's plan. Paper Mario Sticker Star had him kidnapping Peach and destroying the sticker comet. We don't know much about the royal stickers or why they're important, so we can just count this as a normal kidnapping. In Color Splash, he was under the influence of black paint, so he likely wasn't in control of his actions. And in Origami King, he was a victim of King Ali. It's tough to say where this places him on the morality scale. We've got 2 games where he's a villain, 1 where he's a hero, and 3 where he's mostly neutral. I guess this places him on the worst side of neutral, which is still better than the people coming up. And with that, we cap off our barely evil category. Now, for a much shorter category, the unaware. These are characters prominent enough to be considered villains, but too animalistic or stupid to really understand what they're doing. Starting off, we have the Smorgs. Not much is known about these guys. They're some sort of organism that hangs out in man-made structures. Given their initial appearance in Riverside Station and their subsequent invasion of the Excess Express, they're definitely dangerous. They abducted everyone in the train, but we don't know if this was for survival purposes, maliciousness, or just completely random. Next is Stapler. Unlike the other members of the Legion of Stationary, Stapler isn't sentient and is more like a rabid dog. He's responsible for turning the residents of the Mushroom Kingdom into folded soldiers, and the last line of defense before you can fight King Ali. Despite being dangerous, he's more like a pet obeying his master rather than a person choosing to be evil. So, he ranks lower than the other Legion of Stationary members. Rounding out this category, we have Marilyn. Unlike the other 2, Marilyn is a person who might be capable of making her own decisions, given how close she stays to Beldum and how she fights Mario. But since she isn't capable of human speech, I think it's possible she doesn't understand what's going on. In that case, it's tough to hold her actions against her too much. Alright, now we're at the Servants of Evil category. These are the villains who get in your way, but not much else. They might fight you or guard an important artifact, but their evil deeds don't go far beyond that. Just an important note, if they work for another villain, that villain's goals will affect their placement. Starting with the fan favorite from Sticker Star and Color Splash, we have the Snippets. These guys are different from the other villains in this section, as they don't directly work for a bigger villain, nor do they try to fight you. Instead, they have an item you need, and they have you go on their game show, sniff it or whiff it, to win it. They're not trying to advance an evil agenda, they just want to put on good entertainment. They kill Mario if he fails too many rounds, but that goes for just about everyone on this list. Next is the first member of the Legion of Stationary, JeanPierre Colored Pencils the 12th. Yeah, that's his full name. Much like the other members, he's charged with guarding one of the streamers. But unlike most of his comrades, he doesn't do anything to harm the surrounding toads that isn't necessary to get his job done. Aside from trying to stop Mario, all he does is vandalize Overlook Tower, and he mentions how much he hates it when people erase his artwork, which is understandable. These next few barely have any information to rank them morally, so we're gonna go through them pretty fast. Tankoopa is a Pharaoh King hiding at the bottom of Dry ruins. He warns Mario that he'll suffer a horrible fate if he comes any closer, which could be considered courteous if you really want to stretch it. Lava Piranha, as its name would imply, grows at the bottom of a volcano, While it's conscious enough to work for Bowser, it's also stated to be a plant species, so at least part of its combativeness could be seen as a natural instinct to protect its territory. We know basically nothing about Crystal King other than the fact that Bowser hired him to guard one of the star spirits. He's essentially the closest thing to a true neutral we have as far as villains go. Rubberband is another member of the Legion of Stationary. His most notable action is trapping a bunch of toads in their seats and forcing them to watch his play. Imprisoning innocent people is never a good thing to do, but giving them a nice show to watch makes things a little less bad, even if this guy can't take it when someone other than him gets the spotlight. The Koopa Brothers, in addition to the obvious Ninja Turtles parody, exhibit a lot of admirable traits, such as caring about each other and respecting Bowser. They also stole this fort from the Bob-ombs who once inhabited it, and keep them prisoner in the basement, so that's why they're ranked as more evil than some of the other Paper Mario bosses. Keeping with the imprisonment theme, we've got Tape. Instead of trapping people in a theater or jail cell, Tape sticks a bunch of toads to the side of his tower, which has got to be terrifying. That extra fear factor is what puts him above the others. There's something to be said about persistence when it comes to evil doing, and no character on this list is quite as persistent as Junior Troopa. He's your rival in the original Paper Mario, as you fight him a grand total of 6 times. He's not working for Bowser, nor is he getting anything out of this. He's just a bully who can't accept a loss. His persistence is admirable, but when you're going after the man trying to restore people's ability to have wishes granted, you should probably find a different outlet for your anger. On to the next Legion of Stationary member, we have Scissors. As you would imagine, he cuts anyone that gets in his way, and will stick their pieces to enemies. As deadly as that sounds for people made out of paper, cutting people doesn't mean killing them. As with Bowser Jr., people who have been cut can be restored to their original form with the right treatment. In addition, he's only cutting people who try to stop him, so it's not like he's going out of his way to do it. However, if his attitude is any indication, he enjoys it a lot. Starting with the first of Count Bleck's minions, we have Nastasia. While most of Count Bleck's minions are more sympathetic than a lot of the villains so far, and even get redeemed, they're also working toward a more heinous end goal, which is why they're ranked closer to the evil side. Nastasia's backstory isn't explicitly spelled out, but it is implied. She was once a bat caught in a trap, which Bleck freed her from. Afterward, she turned into a woman and swore eternal loyalty to him. She never engages in combat directly, instead using mind control to get things done. Brainwashing is an uncomfortable subject, especially when done on the scale of an entire army like Nastasia did. However, it's not like she had any other ways to help, and it was likely necessary for Count Bleck to amass anything resembling an army. Plus, her powers don't have any lasting damage on the target once they've broken free. The reason she's less evil than any of Bleck's other subordinates is that she's the only one who tried to talk him out of his plan to destroy all worlds. It didn't work, but at least she tried to get him to come to his senses. Up next is another one of Count Bleck's minions, O-Chunks. O-Chunks was once a successful general who was sold out by one of his advisors and lost his entire squadron to enemy forces. Count Bleck preyed upon his guilt, leading him to join Bleck's team. Not only is his guilt understandable, but O-Chunks also has a strong sense of honor, like when he held up the crumbling pieces of Castle Bleck so the heroes could advance. He may be aiding in a horribly destructive plan, but at least he's honorable while doing it. Next is Mr. L. Some of you may be confused by this choice, as Mr. L is just Luigi under Nastasia's control. Well, that's only partially true. Mr. L is a personality loyal to Bleck that was created by Nastasia, but it's not under her direct control, as shown by Mr. L disobeying her direct orders at the beginning of Chapter 6. As such, I think it's fair to count him. Mr. L is full of himself, but aside from that, he doesn't do much other than his job, so it's tough to hold that arrogance against him. Rounding out the Servants of Evil category, we have Kamikoopa. The reason she's ranked so much higher than her boss is because she was by his side for his worst actions in the original Paper Mario, but was nowhere to be found in the games where he was redeemed. Much like Junior Troopa, she gets in Mario's way, and much like Nastasia, it feels like Bowser's entire operation would fall apart without her help. Unlike Nastasia though, she has no issues with what Bowser's doing. She played some of the most important roles in the plan, like kidnapping the Star Spirits spirits and making Bowser invincible in the final battle. She's not any higher because she doesn't do anything heinous that wasn't related to Bowser's plan, but her sheer dedication and competence puts her this high. Now we're at the above and beyond. These are villains whose acts of evil extend beyond being simple roadblocks. They often go out of their way to target innocent people and may even have their own evil enterprises. The first of these villains is General Guy. In addition to guarding one of the star spirits for Bowser, he also sends his troops to Toad Town to rob the citizens. While mass petty theft isn't as bad as the other crimes in this category, it was far from necessary. If anything, it might have actually made things harder for him, as Toad Town's Shy Guy problem is what led Mario to the toy box in the first place. Next, we have King Crocus IV. He's a narcissist who uses his floral sprouts to enslave the Kragnons and have them rebuild his castle. Going from petty theft to brainwashing and slavery sounds like a big leap, but don't worry, there's a reason for this. After the fight with him, it's revealed that the Kragnons were polluting the water that the Floral Sapiens needed to survive. Despite his vain exterior, King Crocus was doing this to save his people. Does that make it justified? Of course not. Considering how Flint Cragley smoothed things over, it's clear this issue could have been settled peacefully. He obviously should have considered his diplomatic options before taking such drastic measures, but it's easy to understand why he took those measures. Next, we have Tubba Blubber. He was a sensitive and fearful guy who was scared of the booze of Gusty Gulch. That all changed when Bowser hired him to guard one of the star spirits and removed his heart, making him invincible. With this newfound power, he took revenge on all the ghosts that scared him by eating them. When Mario beats him and takes him down a peg, he releases all the ghosts he ate, all of whom were unharmed, which is why he's not any higher on the list. He's still higher than King Crocus though, because Crocus's atrocities were in service of his subjects, while Tubba Blubber did this all for himself. Going back to mind control for a second, we have Hole Punch. Much like King Crocus, he has an ego and brainwashes people by disfiguring them. Unlike Crocus, Hole Punch doesn't do this for a noble goal. He just does it so he can have backup dancers for his big performance. And he frequently threatens to punch out the DJ's face if he doesn't play some good music. Lord Crump is next. He's very similar to Kamik, with his constant appearances and tendency to interfere with the heroes. What separates him from Kamik is that Crump goes overboard in his methods. In Chapter 2, he tries to blow up the Great Boggly Tree, which would not only kill Mario and all the innocent Punies, but also the Jabbies, who he had teamed with. You could write this off as a one-off incident, but in one of the Bowser interludes, Lord Crump mentions he's looking for a Super Bob-omb to help him find the Crystal Stars. There's no way a bomb could help him unless he was planning another stunt like at the Great Boggly Tree. Overall, it seems clear that Lord Crump has a penchant for needless, wanton destruction. Some of you may be confused as to why Mimi is ranked so much higher than Ochunks and Nastasia, as all three of them were Count Bleck's minions and were redeemed by the end of the game. There's two reasons for that, neither of which are that Mimi is nightmare fuel. For starters, both Ochunks and Nastasia have sympathetic motives for following Count Bleck, while Mimi's are unknown. More importantly though, while those two only do evil acts as part of their jobs, Mimi literally keeps slaves. Yeah, I know, Nastasia also mentally enslaved Bowser's minions, but that was necessary for Beck's plan. Mimi does this for what we can only assume is her own amusement and possibly greed, although it's unknown what she would even spend rubies on. No store seems to accept them. Moving on to the last of the Shadow Sirens, we have Beldum. What separates her from most of the villains serving another master is her maliciousness. Given her constant verbal abuse of Vivian, she enjoys watching others suffer. That might not be as bad as mind control or slavery, but sometimes the intent is what matters. And Beldum is happy to make even her own sister suffer. Vivian never mentions the Shadow Queen, so it's possible that Beldum was the only one of the Shadow Sirens who fully understood what they were working toward. Bonechill is another character whose evil actions are mostly implied. He was once a NIMBY, a resident of the Over There, before he was banished to the Underwear, the Mario version of hell. By the time Mario gets to the Over There, Bonechill has already sent his army to wage war on the heavens. Bonechill's backstory is clearly inspired by Lucifer, considering how much inspiration Chapter 7 takes from the Christian afterlife. Despite being based off of Satan, we can't put him any higher on the list because we barely know anything about him. he gets virtually no screen time. The only action we can judge him for is waging war on the Over There, which is pretty bad. Hooktail is probably the easiest villain on this list to understand. She's a dragon that terrorizes Petalburg and eats the residents. Unlike Tubba Blubber, the people she eats actually die. Koopa survived, but that's just one of probably dozens of people she's eaten. Hooktail isn't at the top of this category because at the end of the day, all creatures need to eat to survive. Her food source just happens to be sentient. Huff and Puff is a lot more dangerous than most of the bosses in the original Paper Mario. He sets up his Puff Puff machine in flower fields and uses it to cloud up the sky and prevent any sunlight from making it down. That doesn't sound like a huge deal, until you remember that most of the inhabitants of flower fields are sentient plants, who will eventually wither and die without the sun. In other words, Huff and Puff is committing mass murder for seemingly no reason. Next up is the slimiest guy on this list, so it's appropriate that his name is Grubba. On the surface, he seems like an ordinary businessman, hosting a popular fighting arena called the Glitz Pit. However, fighters often go missing, and it turns out Grubba is responsible. He uses a machine to drain them of their energy, which makes him super powerful and reduces them to husks that can barely move. Technically, they're still alive and are able to be brought back to normal, but if Mario hadn't intervened, they likely would have suffered a fate worse than death. Rounding out this category, we have Dupless. Some of you may be surprised to see him this high, as late in the game, he's treated like a joke. That doesn't take away from how diabolical he was in Chapter 4. He spends the first half of the chapter turning the citizens of Twilight Town into pigs. It's done in an ominous way, with everyone in town dreading each ring of the bell, knowing they could be next to lose their sentience and be reduced to mere swine. Things don't get any better in the second half, when his true powers are revealed. He has the ability to steal people's identities. Unlike a normal shapeshifter like Mimi, Dupless goes beyond simply impersonating someone and turns them into a shadowy figure, unable to be considered a person or even tell people who they are. He also makes it clear that these horrifying acts are for his own amusement. That's more than enough to put him at the top of this category, but not enough to beat out the top 5. The final category is the evil masterminds. These guys drive the conflict and have employed many of the villains we've already seen. Their resources are vast, their goals are beyond destructive, and their regard for innocent life is almost non-existent. Count Bleck is next. After all, the most notable part of his character is his tragic backstory. He was part of a tribe of ancients and fell in love with a human woman, Timpani. However, out of fear of her diluting the bloodline, Bleck's father wiped her memory and cursed her to walk the dimensions until the day she died. Bleck searched for her but was never able to find her, and after giving up, he stole the Dark Prognosticus and used its power to destroy his dimension and vowed to do the same to all the others. In addition to the backstory, there's the possibility that the Dark Prognosticus corrupted him in some way. He clearly took no pleasure in what he was doing, and he's willing to die to put a stop to his plan the moment he figures out Timpani is alive. All those mitigating factors can only get you so far when your goal is to annihilate every world in existence, killing an unfathomable amount of people and leaving the whole universe as nothing but a void. Next, we have King Ali. After misinterpreting a message left to him by his creator, King Ali developed a hatred for toads, viewing them as all the same, a clear jab at critics of the more recent Paper Mario games. In order to fix this perceived problem, he plans to wipe them all out of existence using the 1000 cranes technique. Whether or not you agree with Ali's hatred of toads, this is still genocide, and while toads are the primary target of his anger, he views all 2D creatures as inferior and tries to fold them all into origami to control them. So in other words, King Ali is a racist, genocidal dictator. The only reason he's not higher is his change of heart after being defeated, showing there was at least some good in him, even if it rarely manifested. Starting off our top 3, the bronze medal of evil goes to Gratis. Gratis has a simple goal: world domination. That's enough to put anyone near the top. But there's also a certain amount of calculated sadism behind his scheming. Between the willingness to torture his enemies, resetting tech, and his lack of faith in Lord Crump, it's clear he's willing to step on anyone to get what he wants. Of course, this mentality is his downfall. when he can't fathom the Shadow Queen ignoring his orders and is promptly punished for it. A lot of people on this list are psychopaths, but none of them are quite as textbook as Dementio. Throughout Super Paper Mario, Dementio backstabs, manipulates, mind controls, and even kills people to get what he wants, all while maintaining his cheery, playful attitude. His manipulations are all designed to make it easier for the heroes to beat Count Bleck. Don't be fooled though, he's not doing this to stop the destruction of all worlds. He just wants Bleck out of the way so he can create his own worlds once all the existing ones are gone. The reason Dementio isn't at the top is that we don't really know what his idea of a perfect world would look like. It could actually be a utopia, but even if it is, it's not worth the drastic loss of life it would take to get there. The top of this list was difficult to rank, but in the end, we had to go with the Shadow Queen for most evil. Mainly because we know a lot more about her than Dementio and Gratis, and unlike Bleck and Ollie, there isn't a shred of good inside her. According to the legends, she waged war on and destroyed the city that now sits under Rogueport. She created monsters to help her conquer the world, the crystal stars to remold the world, and the pit of 100 trials to punish all who opposed her. While we never see what her rule looks like, it's safe to say she's a ruthless and tyrannical leader. Her magic is also destructive. While we don't know exactly what engulfing the world in darkness will do, the cutscenes before her fight make it seem like the end of life as the world knows it. Endlessly destructive, unquestionably tyrannical, and ruthlessly malevolent. It's more than fitting that this manifestation of pure darkness takes the crown for most evil. Alright guys, your turn. What do you think? Which Paper Mario villain is truly the worst of the worst? Let us know in the comment section. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters and your favorite games. But most importantly, stay wicked.